Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Marr, and I basically do three things. I help companies with their data strategy and their digital transformation. So I work with many of the world's biggest brands, trying to understand what this new digital transformation means, how they can use big data, AI, and machine learning in practice to drive business performance. The second thing I do is I write. I have a weekly column in Forbes. I have my own blog. I have a newsletter, and I have written 15 books. I've written the 2 best-selling books on big data and big data in practice, and I'm currently writing a new one on AI and machine learning in practice, which will come out hopefully next year. And the third thing I do is training and speaking, so a bit like here, but very often delivered as in-house programs where I work with executive teams and boards and also data science teams. What I've been asked to talk about is AI and machine learning in practice. So this is not a technical presentation, but one that, for me, highlights the use of AI in business. And for me, one of the most important messages I'd like to send out today is that this has to be done strategically. It's no good playing around with AI on the edges, running lots of different pilots. I think it's really important to look at your business strategy and then apply AI where you can make the biggest impact on your business. Before we go there, what I'm seeing at the moment is that we are at the beginning of a new industrial revolution. I'm a regular contributor to the World Economic Forum, and their founder, Klaus Schwab, now talks about this 4th industrial revolution. And I'm in complete alignment. I believe that this new industrial revolution that is fueled by big data, AI, the Internet of Things, where we see augmented and virtual reality, 3D printing, all those things happening at the moment, all driven by data and machine learning, will completely transform our world. This whole explosion in the amount of data we now have available, I still find this staggering that we now have 5-6 zettabytes of data in the world, and this will go to over 50 to 60 zettabytes in the next 5 years. 90% of all these 6 zettabytes that we have today were generated in the last 18 months. So we're seeing a complete transformation in the amount of data we now have available, coming from our sensors, from our machines, and coming from our social media activity, from everything that we now do that leaves a digital trace. This is now fueling this new revolution in AI. AI, again, is nothing new. It has been around for 50 years. So why are we talking about it now? What we never had before was this data. So we can now use all of this data to do new kinds of AI. In the past, AIs were really expert systems where we had to tell an algorithm how to use data and what to do in what sequence. What we now have is this ability that we simply give an algorithm data and say, you figure the algorithm out yourself. We talk about machine learning, deep learning, reinforcement learning. This is currently transforming our world. It also brings lots of challenges but I think that those challenges are being addressed, and those challenges are not that dissimilar to what we as human beings have in terms of our limitations. If you think about what AI has struggled with in the past, is things like translating language from English into Chinese, and because there are so many exceptions to the rules that actually programming an algorithm to get this right is almost impossible. However, if we give algorithms access to billions of data sets and say, you figure out the rules yourself and all the exceptions, that seems to be working really well. And we're making huge strides in language processing and understanding pictures and understanding our voices. The challenge at the moment is that lots of these systems are black boxes. So we don't quite understand how some of these algorithms work. However, I've, especially over the last few months, I've seen huge efforts by companies like IBM and others to actually produce algorithms that are more transparent. But if you think about this, we talk about explicit knowledge and tacit knowledge for our own understanding. So explicit knowledge is something we can easily write down. I can write down how to use this remote control. I can give this to you and you can use it. And expert systems have worked well in this scenario. Tacit knowledge is knowledge that is based on experience. So the way you are able to grab this bottle of water, right? As a baby, we have lots of trial and error. We try to grab this bottle of water. Suddenly we learn, okay, this little signal to these muscles worked. And then over time we refine this and get better at it. The thing is, nowadays, this is tacit knowledge. I can't explain to anyone, this is how I do it. This is how I grab a bottle of water. And this is, I think, a massive challenge when it comes to lots of machine learning decision making. For me, I do lots of talks in lots of industry verticals trying to explain how AI impacts manufacturing, the financial services industry, retail, and others. And I can't think of any industry that will not be completely transformed. So one I've picked for today just as a little example is the fashion industry. If you think about what is happening there is that in the past, this was a very manual process driven by people that would come up with new designs, then use a sewing machine to produce a piece of clothing, for example, and then you try to sell this or someone ordered this specifically and you make it. The two ways I see this being transformed is that we are now having smarter products and services. So the way this is being marketed and delivered and the products we are delivering, and the way we are producing things, so the way we are performing as an organization. And the first one is, if you look at now what's happening in factories that produce garments or any fashion item, a lot of this is now being automated, increasingly using machine learning, even 3D printing, that allows us to completely automate the process, but also completely customize items to individuals, where we can design our own trainers and have them 3D printed a few days later. The other thing that is happening is that the product is becoming smarter. And I see this in every single industry, that the product or the services, so what you're offering to your customers, has to have some intelligence inbuilt. So we now have smart clothing. But if we think we now have about 15 to 20 billion internet-connected things in the world, this is likely to go to over 200 billion in the next 3 to 5 years. So we're seeing this massive explosion where everything is becoming smarter, including our trainers, our clothing. It can now take body readings. You now have athletics clothes that can actually measure your pulse rate. It can give you a reading of how you've exercised your muscles. And it transforms the way we now deliver our services. And a great example that I've recently written about is Stitch Fix. So they're a company that is a subscription company. So if you want to buy clothing, you subscribe to them, you fill out a profile, and they now have 2.5 million or so users across the US, making $1 billion. And you then say, this is the kind of clothing I like, and they will use AI, machine learning algorithms, to find you new clothing, and then they work in collaboration with stylists who then put this together. They take the AI recommendations, they personalize them, they write you personal notes saying this is why we've picked these clothes for you, and they send them to you on a regular basis. And then you can either keep those or you can send them back. And this for me is an important point here that I want to make, that quite often we are trying to use AI, especially in incumbent organizations, to almost automate a business model that is now out of date. So for me, the starting point has to be to actually revise your business model and say, okay, what does this new industrial revolution mean for your business? Are you actually in the right shape to deliver this? And once you've revised your business strategy, you then use this to drive your AI strategy. And I know work with lots of organizations to do exactly this. This week I've spent a lot of time with Shell, for example, helping them to develop their data strategy. So the 2 points that I think businesses need to look at is these 2 jigsaw pieces. One is how we use AI to deliver smarter products and services to our customers. And the other jigsaw piece is how we use AI to improve our internal processes and automate things and drive efficiencies that way. So I thought it might be worth looking at some of the really cool, innovative things that I'm seeing in both of these areas. The first one is around customer smarter products. One of my favorite examples is a smart nappy, or diaper for our American friends. And you think, why would I need a smart nappy, right? So I've got 3 kids. Luckily, they're now out of the nappy stages. And the first versions of these smart nappies basically send you a tweet saying, please change your baby's nappy, because it has deposited something in the nappy. And you think, okay, I've got other sensors that will tell me that, right? So I'm not sure I need a smart nappy. However, the latest versions of these smart nappies, they cost almost the same as a normal disposable nappy. They have really sophisticated sensors in them that now take a complete stool and urine sample of the baby. This is now transferred to your phone. Your phone sends it to a cloud server where this is now being analyzed. And for the first time, you get constant analysis of your baby's hydration levels, their sodium in their diet. So you might get warnings saying that you're giving your baby too much salt, you're not giving it enough liquids. But even more interesting is that it now moves into predictive analytics, where they now use machine learning algorithms to predict about 2 to 3 days before your baby might be developing an infection. And it will alert you to this. And this I find really fascinating, especially if we're looking at what is happening around some of the IoT devices that are now collecting data from the latest Apple Watch to the Fitbits. All of this data will become much more predictive, where we can say, actually, your heart rate is not looking well, you better speak to someone about it. Another example, the complete opposite spectrum, comes from John Deere. They are a traditional Midwest American tractor and farm equipment manufacturer, and they've really embraced all of this and have transformed their organization from a traditional manufacturer to a digital company. The first product they designed was a digital farming product where they basically gave intelligence back to farmers. Initially through sensors that they would install into the soil. The sensors would analyze the soil and then make predictions about what best to plant, so what crops. They would then make recommendations about when to fertilize, whether the fertilization had the right effect, and then they make predictions about the kind of crop levels the farmer can expect, taking into account external data like weather predictions and other things. John Deere now is making over $1 billion selling data to farmers. So their service has become much more intelligent. The other thing they're now doing is they're investing a lot in AI, machine learning, and automation. So all their tractors have the potential to be self-driving tractors. They're now using drones to monitor crop levels. So all of this is becoming much more sophisticated. Spotify is another great example. I was with Spotify earlier this year, and obviously they have huge volumes of data that simply didn't exist before. They now know what we're listening to, in what order. They also know where we are when we listen to songs, and their whole idea is to make this all more intelligent. So the idea is to give you songs that you might never have found yourself. And they will say, okay, you're now in the gym, your heart rate is this. These are the kind of songs that really motivated you in the past. We will decompose it, look at the beats per minute, look at the kind of voices on this song, and then look at our 43 other million songs and find similar songs. So again, smarter services. Again, Fitbit, one of the things that we're struggling with is understanding our calorie intake. They're good at monitoring our calorie usage, using our activity, heart rate, and our geolocation, and so on. What they're now working on is using machine learning so we simply snap photographs of our meals. Instead of saying, this is what I'm eating, you take a picture, and then machine learning algorithms will predict what's on your plate and how many calories are on there. And this is getting better and better. Disney is another great example. They're now, when you go to their Disney parks, they have these smart bands. So they are basically, they call them magic bands. They have a GPS tracker in them. They have contactless pay ability so that you use them to open your hotel room, to pay in, and they allow Disney to track people through the park. So for the first time, they have an idea of where people are, where they're queuing, and their idea is to make this experience better, and then say, okay, the queues are getting a bit longer here, the queues are much less over there, we send you a message or give you free coffee so you can wait, because we again know that those queues will come down in 20 minutes time. Even more advanced, they are now using machine vision cameras in their theaters to look at and understand people's reactions. So they would have cameras that look at all of your faces and then say, okay, are you engaged? Are you surprised? Are you scared? So when they have their shows in their theme parks, they get real-time feedback and sentiment analysis. It is also transforming the way traditional companies deliver products. So this is an example. I've done some work with Kony. They are one of the world's largest escalators and lift manufacturers. So what they're now doing is they've changed their value proposition to one where they say, if you buy our lifts, they will never break down. It is our responsibility to service them, and we use AI and machine learning algorithms, especially things like sensors that sit on the cables that pull the lifts up and down. And they realized that the vibrations on the sensors would give away that one of the motors might be breaking down at some point in the future. So they will then schedule maintenance at a point when they know the lift is not being used. So predictive maintenance. And for me, the key here is that we need to create value proposition that our customers actually appreciate. I've done some work with the Royal Bank of Scotland, and what they're now doing is that their whole data strategy was around delivering a better customer service. And instead of what lots of other financial institutions have done in the past is almost use data to exploit their customers and say, what's the minimum effort? What's the maximum I can increase their fees or lower the interest rate so you're not looking elsewhere? They're now saying, actually, we want to deliver some real value back to our customers. A bit like some of the other examples have shown here too. And they're now saying, we want to tell customers a few months before your interest rate goes to zero, so you can look for new products. We want to look at, are you double paying for travel insurance if you're getting this as our premium customer? And we will tell you. So it's a win-win relationship. The second lens then is about automation, using data to drive your internal processes, to drive efficiencies, to drive cost savings and efficiency savings inside your organization. And we can talk about self-driving cars, but I think it's much cooler talking about self-flying drones. This is the Raptor drone. This is a drone that is completely independently able to take off, fly to a war theater, identify a target, fire a rocket to destroy the target, and return to base with no human interaction whatsoever. The only reason the Royal Air Force is not using these in that way is that it's saying ethnically we need to have this ability for a human being to make a decision to say it's okay to fire this rocket. But they are able to do this. I've done some work with Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce is partnering currently with Google to develop this self-floating, self-driving ship. Again, these can stay on the oceans forever. They are now independently able to drive. And I don't know whether you've seen these passenger drones. This is another big thing that's happening at the moment, and sometimes you think this is a bit science fiction. Instead of an Uber, I order a drone to pick me up. Dubai wants to have this up and running in the next 3 years. There are currently companies bidding for this. This is a company that is backed up by Daimler called Volocopter, and they've had their first test drive actually with the Crown Prince of Dubai in the vehicle, and this is their vision for the future. Completely autonomous flying without any human interaction. So what is happening here is that this is transforming the way we run our business processes. We automate this. One of my customers is the European Parliament, and they have a huge big department that does translation. So they need to translate all their documents into all the membership languages. 90% of these translations are now machine pre-translated. So what a translator now will do is they will check this for the nuances. But lots of the day-to-day, and actually if you talk to some of the translators, this is the bit they actually find really exciting. The day-to-day translating the same word day in and day out is actually quite boring. And this is what I'm seeing happening, is that we need to focus on the really value-added things in our work and automate everything else. So using AI to automate your business processes. This is an insurance company example that I've done some work with. This insurance company now uses an app to monitor how good your driving is. So instead of saying you pay an insurance premium based on where you live and how old you are and what car you drive and how many miles and so on, they say, no, we actually monitor this. You download the app and we will see how good is your driving. And they will also go a step further. And so the idea is to create a completely dynamic insurance premium that says, okay, this is how much you have actually driven. This is how well you have driven. This is what's the weather like. These are the roads you have used. And all roads are classified by danger levels. So if you are someone that drives a bit too fast, a bit too close to other cars, even in the rush hour when it's raining, using quite dangerous roads, you might pay a lot. If you are an 18-year-old driver that normally gets penalized a lot, that is driving really well at 11 o'clock in the morning along safe roads when there's no traffic, you might pay no car insurance. What they're also doing is they're using AI in their claims handling. So they're using things like speech and sentiment analysis. So speech analysis can now detect whether someone might be lying, which is a red flag in their call center. So if someone brings in with a claim and the AI detects that someone indicates that someone might not be telling the truth, they will flag this up and investigate this further. Again, if you're using an app and you had an accident at more than 25 miles an hour, the car's written off straight away, so you can automate some of the processes. So again, using AI and machine learning to automate your processes. A great example comes from Wimbledon. Wimbledon now has an IBM Slam Tracker system installed. They've had this for many years. They're getting more sophisticated, using cameras and sensors to monitor everything that is taking place on the tennis court. The federation has now also allowed smart tennis records. So they now measure the acceleration you have generated from your racket, the spin, and the cameras and sensors together basically with the smart tennis record measure everything that takes place on the tennis court. In the past, this data was put into a database and then researchers would dive into this to then help live commentators or help people that would write an article, sports journalists who write an article to identify some of the facts. What you can now do is you can use natural language generation tools that use AI and machine learning to look at the data and automatically write a match report. These are now so good that I can't distinguish them between a report that was written by a sports journalist and one written by AI. I told you in the beginning I write for Forbes. What I find fascinating is that quite a large percentage of their analyst reports that are published on Forbes. So if companies release their annual figures and someone analyzes their data and publishes this, they are now automated by tools like narrative science and automated insights that use natural language processing. So what I'm seeing is that we're now seeing this complete transformation in every job. In the past, it was more the blue-collar jobs. What I'm now seeing is that more of the white-collar jobs are now being automated. Even jobs like doctors. If you think about this, there's so much wrong with the current healthcare system, where you usually wait until you have some symptoms and then you go to your doctor sees you for 10 minutes, then you're super lucky if they actually detect what might or might not be wrong with you. Usually they will give you a generic medicine that is designed for everyone, only usually works at about 30% of people, and then they go from there. This is completely inefficient and wrong. A world that we're moving towards is where we use AI and machine learning to detect things before they're happening, where medicine will become much more personalized, where the doctor will ring you saying your Fitbit or your Apple Watch is telling me something. You better have this checked out. And where you then use systems and AI to help you diagnose this. You can now speak to a voice interface for hours, giving them all your symptoms, potentially adding your genetic fingerprint to this. And you think, who would I trust more to make a judgment? This 10-minute consultation with the doctor who hasn't got time to read my notes even, or an AI that can take into account so much more information. And so this whole idea of cobots, of us co-working, our jobs being augmented by AI and robots to deliver more value. The key message here is that we need to do this smarter. So I see so many AI projects that don't deliver well, or they deliver little bits of value. What I think we need to do as a business, you need to do as a business, is go back and say, okay, is my strategy right for this new world? Once you're clear about this, you then need to use this strategy to identify the biggest value drivers where you can use AI and machine learning to really improve either the customer deliverables, the value proposition, your product and services, make them smarter, or the back end of your business where you say, how can I automate, or can I use robotic process automation to drive efficiencies? Okay, hopefully this was useful. I believe that we're in this space that will completely transform every single job, every single organization. AI is the major force behind all of this, and the key message is we need to have an AI strategy in place now. Anything else, feel free to have a look on my website. Tons of articles on all of this. If you're on LinkedIn, feel free to send me an invite. If you just mention this conference, I will connect to you. Everything I publish anywhere on different platforms, I will share on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, whatever your preferred platform is. But for me, LinkedIn seems to work the best. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.